Ohio there, this is Kermit the Frog.
I'm Captain Kirk.
Fascinating.
I'm a doctor, not a mechanic.
Thank you, love you. Mwah.
Most illogical.
Aye, sir.
Well, that was different. Yep, lousy, but different.
Places, please, and here we go.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, bears, Vendorians, and things, to episode 43 of the MuppeTrek podcast. I'm Steve.
And I'm Jarman, and we're here to compare, contrast, and confer about our two favorite franchises. And what are those, Steve?
As the Muppets and Star Trek, we will be and have been doing one-to-one reviews of The Muppet Show and Star Trek, the original series.
And tonight we're covering The Muppet Show with special guest star Don Knotts and Star Trek original series episode Wolf in the Fold. But for the second time ever, we have a guest, or maybe third time, I don't know, second time, I think.
Second time, I think.
We have a guest on the show, and that means we have a guest episode from a different series to go along with the other two. And who is that guest in that episode, Steve?
That's right. Our special treat this week and second guest is fellow podcaster Louis Gaudio from it's Robots versus Dinosaurs. Robots come first.
That's right. Robots first.
Okay. Robots versus Dinosaurs podcast. And we're excited to have him with us. So thank you for joining us, Louis.
Thank you for having me. Awesome.
Tell our audience a little bit more about the Robots versus Dinosaur podcast.
So Robots versus Dinosaurs is the podcast where we watch a movie. I invite a guest, a co-host on every week, and I have them pick the movie. The only criteria is it has to feature a robot or a dinosaur. So it's often sci-fi movies, of course.
Well, yes.
And yeah, but because my guest picks it, it's also usually somebody's favorite movie, and that's kind of the core of what the podcast is about, is me sort of interviewing somebody about their favorite movie or a movie they really like that might be silly or might not be that well remembered, but it is by them.
Well, as a podcast that has reviewed a lot of ill-remembered films over the years, we certainly appreciate that.
And appreciate the difficulty of having a different guest every week or every podcast. That's really difficult.
Yes, that's incredible. We're on, this is episode, 43, and you're our second guest. We're a little behind.
Behind the times.
I'm currently shaking up the formula a little bit because I got obsessed with WandaVision, and technically that has a robot.
Oh. I mean, you're not wrong.
Not at all. So, so I got a guest, my friend Ryan, that's a huge fan of the show. Big MCU fan, and we've just been doing coverage of that week by week. So it's my first time covering a TV show, but
okay.
I really enjoy that switch up of the format a little.
Okay, yeah. What are you finding? What are the challenges with the new format?
The challenges, it's actually harder to think of what the challenges are. Everything else.
Okay, that's
easy.
great.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That means you've set up a good format for yourself if it's easy.
Because with a movie is always going to be a longer review. Typically, it's going to be about the length of the movie. But with the show, I never really go over like 45 minutes or an hour. So
that's true.
That's longer than the show usually.
That's true.
Yeah.
In some cases, yeah.
Now you just need a dinosaur show to go along with it.
Right.
Yeah, maybe Disney's Dinosaurs, because it's also on Disney Plus.
That's true.
Well, we're going to be reviewing that a few years down the road. But before we get there, Louis, tell me about what show you chose to add to our MuppeTrek lineup.
So I brought in 30 Rock and the episode, season 2, episode 14, Sandwich Day.
Which is apparently a pretty famous episode, right? Amongst the fans, especially.
It's a good, as soon as I saw Sandwich Day, I was like, yes, Sandwich Day. I was very excited. It's certainly, maybe not iconic, but notable.
It has a lot of great memorable memes, like "Where's my mac and cheese?" or
I'll cut you so bad you'll have a chin. You'll all have chins.
My favorite person is Jenna Maroney, and her line, "I'll do it, but only for the attention."
Only for the attention.
I guess we'll get to more of that later. That's true. There's a lot of them in there.
Yeah, we will. But before we get to that, first segue.
Steve, tell us about our guest we have this week on the Muppet. Just guest star,
That's
Don,
right.
the Don Knotts.
Bush League. Don Knotts was an American comedy icon. He won 5 Emmy Awards for his work on The Andy Griffith Show and also had a very long reoccurring nutty neighbor role, Ralph Furley on Three's Company. He was in classic iconic films like The Apple Dumpling Gang and The Apple Dumpling Gang Rides Again.
Oh.
But what does our audience know him from? Well, he was the TV repairman in the now cult classic Pleasantville. That's right. Or maybe this week's episode of The Muppet Show.
That's right.
The backstage plot this week centers around the fact that Fozzie helps to plan the show. He picks the music. Floyd comes seemingly to complain, only to declare that Fozzie is a hip dude. And gives him some cool guy sunglasses, which cause Fozzie to stumble around backstage and Animal to attack him enthusiastically. On stage this week, however, Kermit introduces Don Knotts and a spicy opening number, Sweet Gingerbread Man. A great number with human-sized dancing gingerbread men and a puppet in the foreground. Very clever, very clean, very nice. Fozzie reveals to the audience he is helping plan the show and introduces the next number, which is an inner space number, quote unquote. This is the Windmills of Your Mind, a crazy green 3-legged monster racing to the end of the number when he actually runs into a windmill in his mind. Kermit introduces Don in The Beast of the Week, an animal exhibit style show. A cute orange monster escapes its cage, causes some havoc, and then its huge orange mother comes to get it. Don Knotts just making silly faces the entire time. Next, we get Veterinarian's Hospital, which is always Jarman's favorite, where the crazed green monster from Windmill of Your Mind is on the table, and it's just a lot of foot and leg puns, as you would expect.
Yo, yeah.
Following this, we get Burlington Birdie of Bow, a ritzy British gentleman talking about his ritzy British life, basically. Afterward, we get a talk spot on the wall where Fozzie wanders out wearing his cool guy sunglasses, saying he can't see, and Don Knotts talks about how he's also very cool and pulls out his own cool guy sunglasses and then wanders off stage blindly. We have another live animal appearance this episode, which is crazy, with Rolf singing What a Wonderful World to an actual sleeping puppy. It's friggin' adorable.
I wasn't sure it wasn't dead at first. I thought it was a dead puppy.
Thought they'd pull a Milo Notice. That was going on. Finally, Fozzie introduces Lullaby of Birdland. Don plays the upright bass, and it gets funky as Don struggles to keep up with the electric mayhem in this hot jam. Kermit thanks Don Knotts one last time. Fozzie has his cool guy sunglasses revoked, and Don assures him that it's beautiful to be square. And that is what we call The Muppet Show.
Oh, you didn't have the Swedish chef making his fish chowder in this episode?
I could not find a clean version of it. I read about it, but I didn't actually view it, so I didn't want to review it.
Oh, Lou and I had the Swedish chef making the fish chowder.
Oh, you rat bastards. I can't wait till there's good complete versions on Disney Plus in like a week.
And better quality too. Yeah, that'll be great. But
it'll be the best quality I've ever seen it in. I'm very excited.
Basically, Swedish chef just tries to make fish chowder, and the fish almost drowns him in the pot. But yeah, it's cute.
Ah, damn, I missed it. Bastards. Okay, so what did you guys think of this week's episode of The Muppet Show with Don Knotts?
Go ahead, Lou.
Well, I have a question about The Muppet Show. What time did it air when it was on TV?
Oh, good question.
Oh, Lord. I think this was in like a evening variety spot, if I remember correctly.
Ah.
It's so good and like so out there and brave and confident in a weird way. And I feel like television peaked with Rolf singing to a sleeping puppy. Like that's such a confident bit.
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not.
No.
I can tell he's legit.
It's so adorable, and it doesn't make any sense when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
It makes less sense the more you think about it. It's a puppet dog singing to an actual sleeping puppy. The real puppy is either oblivious to what's going on or just like
or dead,
really comforted, or dead. It might be dead, but it looks so comforted by this.
Oh, yeah.
And I was too. This was the most comforting thing I've had. Like 3 minutes.
Well, I mean, you got to figure at this
seen.
point, Rolf had a 15-year basically run with American Household Dogs after he was the spokesdog for Purina, I believe, for a very long time, and featured in commercials with real dogs. So if anything, maybe that's why they were so cocky.
Rolf has dog experience, is what you're
Rolf
saying.
has dog experience. That's right.
But you're right that it's bold and that I didn't know what time it came on either, and that it's an evening show. But like a lot of things are really just super family friendly and saccharine and for children even. And so there are things for adults, of course, in the Muppets, but it's definitely very family kid friendly for an evening show. So I think that's kind of interesting that that's the case. So that's bold in and of itself, I guess.
That's true. What did you think about Don Knotts this week? How did you think he did?
I think Don was all right. I mean, I grew up watching him on the Andy Griffith Show. My stepdad is obsessed with the Andy Griffith Show, and so we watched a lot of it. And he was perfectly suited for that role, the dopey, bumbling kind of sheriff deputy. And in this, it just felt like some of this comedy was very forced and just not as natural as you'd hoped it be for someone who'd been doing that kind of comedy for decades. But he was better suited towards some sketches than others, and he really seemed to be, falling in love with the Muppets, and he looked them straight in the eye. It's always a big thing I look for the host, if they can just take it seriously. And I think he really got that part down, really feeling comfortable with them. But his comedy, just not for me, I guess. It's kind of what it would go for.
That's fair. What would you think, Louis? How'd Don do?
He does. His signature seems to be mugging to the camera, like in that opening sketch. When I don't really understand the setup, but when that giant Muppet is like, "You don't like chorus girls," and then he just mugs to the camera.
Yeah.
I wrote down that Don Knotts. If you put Don Knotts next to Rodney Dangerfield, and they were in Mario and Luigi costume, you wouldn't have to do any writing. It just the sketch writes itself.
I would watch that movie. B, do it, Hollywood.
Hey, you're stealing my act. I'm looking at the camera.
No respect. No respect.
That's really. I'm surprised. Was he ever on the Muppet Show? Ryan Dangerfield?
I don't think so.
He's the right time era, I don't know.
It would be
tailor made for it. That surprises me that he was never on.
I think the music was good this week and a good representation. Windmill of Your Mind was short, sweet, and funny.
Mm-hmm.
You got What a Wonderful World, which we've all commented on, which is so sweet as long as that puppy is alive. If anything, I thought maybe Lullaby of Birdland was a little bit disappointing, especially as the entire B plot of the episode built to it.
That's true.
So I don't know if there's any performance Dawn could have given there that would have been big enough to make up for this thing they'd been building the entire episode. I just don't know if it existed.
I thought the gingerbread number would give me nightmares as a child.
Oh, I love that gingerbread number.
It was
and you get to hear
a new phobia for me.
Weird Frank Oz child singing, kind of.
I like you said, it's technically impressive, but it's a new nightmare for me. Yeah, that's very true.
Oh man, I did like they brought back On the Wall.
What's on the wall?
Like when like Don Knotts, the talk spot.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah,
I like that they at least had some of that. That's been missing this season. It was good to see a veterinarian's hospital in there.
Yeah, good missing for a while.
This is kind of a middling to low episode for me, I think.
Any other thoughts on it, Lou? That you were good or bad? I guess.
Maybe the whole thing with Lullaby of Birdland ending up being an underwhelming number is just proof that Kermit really should be running the show.
Oh,
maybe that was the joke. Is that Kermit was right? It was terrible.
That's great. That's
true.
That.
I like that. Okay, that's right. Fozzie planned his parts, and I planned the good parts.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say a middling episode as well. Not terrible by any means, but just kind of.
I like that fan theory, so I'm going to run with it.
That makes the episode better for me.
Some music this week. Sweet Gingerbread Man, aside from giving you nightmares, was from a guy named Michel Legrand, originally from 1970 movie called The Magic Garden of Stanley Sweetheart.
Okay.
A movie about sex and drugs in New York City. The original recording was by a guy named the Mike Curb Congregation. And Mike Curb later went into politics at the encouragement of Ronald Reagan and was elected Lieutenant Governor of California in 1978. The Windmills of Your Mind, also a Legrand. This won the Academy Award for Best Original Song after being featured in the 1968 Thomas Crown Affair. That goofy song. Burlington Birdie from Bow, a classic British music hall song made famous by a male impersonator, which I didn't know, but was apparently like a keystone of British music halls for a long time. Ella Shields, but she actually wasn't from the UK. She was born in Maryland, here in the US.
Yeah, that number was kind of boring. I forgot about that one because it was forgettable.
Right. And the song was really nothing. There was no good, clean punchlines. There was just nothing to lead to.
Yeah.
What a Wonderful World. This was first recorded by Louis Armstrong. He did it. This was huge in the UK, but the head of ABC Records at the time just didn't like it. So it just didn't do well in the US. And it wasn't until it was featured in the 1978 Good Morning Vietnam that it was re-released and hit Billboard Top 50 here in the US.
Good Morning Vietnam. That movie? Yeah.
Yes. Lullaby of Birdland by a guy named George Shearing. He was from the UK, came over to New York, and played piano in a bunch of big clubs, including one called Birdland. This club decided to start hosting a weekly radio show live from the club, which was apparently a huge thing to do at the time. And while trying to pick a song, Shearing said that he would write one. He spent weeks just commiserating over it and then had a eureka moment and jotted it down in about 10 minutes.
Nice.
Yeah. But what do you think was the best Muppeteering moment this week?
For sure, it was Rolf singing to the dog because because the puppy stayed. It was asleep for most of the time, so it was so comfortable with what that puppeteer was doing, and I just think that I think it sounds silly, but it just speaks to the level of confidence of those performers.
Yeah,
That's
fair.
true. Wow.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I put mine for the little triple looking monster scene. The one that was jumping around, and even though Don Knotts was just mugging for half of that thing, but the puppeteering was done very well. Like, because every time it was down on a surface, its mouth was moving like it was talking, and then they had to bounce it around again and cut away and go back, and then they had to pull it up through his clothes and make it protrude out of his chest and everything, and up his butt and everything, and on his shoulder, and it's like. That just looked really challenging, so I think that was just really well done.
A lot of movement.
You feel like that thing was really alive and flying around the room, so I thought that was pretty cool.
You might not like this. I've got to give it to Sweet Gingerbread Man. I think the flattened full-size dancers, the coordination, the choreography, and then the puppet down front in the foreground.
That's true.
Made for a very clean and clever image. And that puppet in the foreground, big guys in the background, is not really something I think we've seen a lot of thus far in the Muppet Show. So in that way, it's also unique.
Yeah, because they made the puppet look like it was the same size as the other guys. That was kind of
right by playing with sort of the flattening.
Yeah. That was neat.
It was smart. So for that reason, and because it's going to give you nightmares, I've got to give it to that.
Of course.
So Louis, tell us about this week's episode of 30 Rock that we're reviewing.
All right, we're talking about season 2, episode 14, Sandwich Day. This episode starts with Jack is talking to Rip Torn. I forget his character's name.
Geis.
Yes, Mr. Geis is in a coma. I forget why. It's been a long time since I've seen him.
Yeah, it's true. Out of context, it doesn't matter. He's in a coma.
He's talking to him about how his son-in-law is ruining everything, and Kathy, his daughter, is ruining everything. And he is getting moved down from his office to the 11th floor, which is dismal and dystopian. And the other plot going on with Liz is that, she kind of has two plots going on. One is that Floyd is in town. Floyd is Jason Sudeikis.
Yeah.
And he is, I believe at this point in the show, an ex.
Yes.
And he's in town briefly. He wants to see her. She is debating whether or not she kind of wants to seduce him while he's in town. And the other plot, the main plot, Sandwich Day, is that it's Sandwich Day, which is when the Teamsters go to this mysterious place in Brooklyn they won't tell anybody about once a year. But they come back with these amazing sandwiches that they bought everyone. And someone steals and eats Liz's sandwich.
No.
Which, exactly. As soon as you hear that, like, this is season 2, like, and Liz Lemon by this point. As soon as you hear someone's going to eat her food, it's nothing else in the episode matters. That's all you can focus on. And so they have to come up with a way to get the food, the sandwich back. and the Teamsters agree to a drinking contest, which Jenna volunteers for, and pretty much is their ace in the hole. And it culminates in Liz running through the airport to catch up with Floyd, but she has to eat her sandwich at the the security checkpoint.
I love they don't cut away for that. She eats the whole thing in the shot. Like, it's amazing.
You expect them to cut, and she just freaking goes for it.
That's where you see like Tina Fey is really like has her roots in
Dedicated.
improv. And, yeah, she's so dedicated to the bit. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got on the plot. I might have missed a few things, but that's pretty much
That's fine. That's close enough.
Yeah, because Alec Baldwin, Jack, does not get his anything resolved yet in this episode for his situation being stuck on the 12th floor, and then
and then it ends with him deciding he has to leave GE.
Yeah, he kind of fails upward. He's appointed the head of crisis and weather management.
So the government
by the Bush administration.
Which in itself is like a joke later on in the season.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Well, I like that you picked this show because it's a show about a show, which in itself is very Muppety. And then on top of that, you have a character like Liz Lemon, who is effectively Kermit.
That's true.
Yes.
Just trying to get all these people to do things while shenanigans just happen backstage.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. It's a similarity.
It's absolutely a show about a show.
Something y'all track in every episode of MuppeTrek that I've started noticing is the Muppets. When you review the Muppets, there tends to be an A through line of usually involving the guest star. And then a through line involving all the backstage shenanigans.
Right.
So it's 30 Rock was such a strong parallel. I saw so many similarities.
And I feel like Tina Fey is definitely a fan of the Muppets for sure. She has to be.
Well, I mean, she was in one of the films.
That's right. There you go. Well, I hadn't seen this episode in years. Because I haven't watched this whole thing through in years and years. But I think it was a great way of reminding me of all the characters. Like, each character has a good amount of screen time. Even the CEO's daughter-in-law, like Mrs. Geist or whatever, the crazy daughter.
Kathy Geist.
She's like in her 50s, but she loves unicorns and Mark Wahlberg. I just thought that was amazing. But it makes me want to rewatch it. And I love Brian Dennehy, who's like a great, classic actor. He's been around forever.
Such a classic head of the Teamsters. Good.
He's so good. And then Jack McBrayer, what's his character name? I can't remember. Kenneth the page.
Parcell.
But just in the end, he saves them by finishing the drinking game because he's like, "Oh, that's that old mountain milk. I drink that since I was a baby." And he starts drinking. He drinks them all onto the table.
That's Hill People milk.
Yeah, Hill People milk.
I did love the serendipitous resolve of all of them suddenly being able to drink.
Yeah,
it was just so clean and ridiculous. If Frank suddenly doesn't need to be on antibiotics anymore. So good.
They can all start drinking.
They really rallied as a team finally.
Exactly.
I also love that he lied about why he was on antibiotics.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Having some skanky club sex. and then Lutz outs him. Nah, he just lost his lucky pen and he thinks it's in his ear again.
Oh, God. I missed that one. Oh, that's good. But yeah, I noticed that all the music throughout these episodes are always great. They have like great music throughout this whole show. It's very like carnival-esque at times, and it's just, I don't know, it's worth watching. I haven't seen it, folks.
Tina Fey's husband is the composer.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Okay.
That's right. So all the whole show is very, very well composed for that reason.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think my favorite moment in the episode was when they get the sandwiches and all the guys have eaten theirs and they look over and Lutz is eating his very slowly. And they're like, he's savoring it. Get him. And they all go over and gang up on him like a pack of middle school boys.
Think you're better than us.
Yeah, think you're better than us. Oh, it's like needles.
I can't eat it too fast or my stomach will explode.
It will explode. Lutz is such a great tragic character. If you follow his line through the whole show, he gets more and more tragic.
He's like the guy in Archer gets shot every episode.
I can't remember this episode of the next one, but at some point someone makes fun of him for getting surgery for an undescended testicle, and his response is, it was 2 undescended testicles. This is such a good moment. 30 Rock, great pick.
Yeah,
Fits in
and
great with
a couple
Muppets.
little things of trivia there for this episode. Apparently, as of 2020, there is still no IKEA in Cleveland.
They're never going to get it.
And in her 2011 autobiography, Bossy Pants, Tina Fey says this is one of her 4 favorite scripts of the whole show.
Okay.
Yeah, so there you go. That's good stuff. It's a good episode.
If Liz is Kermit, I definitely think Kenneth is Scooter. But do you see any other very strong like parallels between any of the 30
I mean,
cast
Gonzo would
members?
be Tracy. Like always
Who's
trying to
Jenna?
do the most crazy, obscene thing.
Jenna's Miss
If
Piggy.
Oh my God, she is. You're right.
Jenna's either Miss Piggy or maybe a morbid version of Fozzie. Like the constant need for like desire and
That's
attention and worrying about their position constantly. That being said, that's also very Piggy.
Yeah, I see Pete as Fozzie.
I could see that. Just trying to hold it together.
Which one is the bald producer? What's his name?
That's Pete. Pete
Oh,
Hornberger.
that is Pete. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Hornberger. All right. Well, Jarman, tell us about this week's episode of Star Trek: The Original Series.
All right, so this week we have Wolf in the Fold. So we have Kirk, Scotty, and Bones, who are off enjoying shore leave on the peaceful planet Argilus 2. And Scotty is quite taken with the belly dancer at the club they're lounging at, so he chats her up and they end up going off together into the night. So Kirk and Bones decide to leave to go to a new club where the women do that thing that they never say what it is. But as they're walking, they hear a scream and they find the belly dancer dead, stabbed to death, and Scotty standing over the body looking dazed with a knife in his hand. And Scotty claims he can't remember what happened. So Scotty is detained and an investigation is undergone by a Mr. Hengist, or is it Hengist? I can't remember.
Hengist?
Hengist. Yeah. He's from off planet because the Argelians are so peaceful. They don't even have police. They just like having sex all the time.
That's right.
So Kirk convinces the Argelian leader to allow them to beam down a technician from the Enterprise with a psycho tricorder, because that's a thing, which apparently will help Scotty remember exactly what happened. So they beam down a female technician with the psycho tricorder, and for some reason they put her in a room alone with a suspected murderer, and suddenly they hear a scream, and she ends up stabbed to death, and Scotty is nearby unconscious with a knife once again. So now they bring in the Argelian leader's wife, who's a practicer of ancient seance-type mental ability stuff, and she's going to be able to suss out what happened with Scotty with this kind of seance thing. So all the other witnesses are also rounded up and suspects are rounded up to be in the same room for this seance. And Kirk suggests they lock the room down so no one can enter or leave. So then they once again don't restrain Scotty and they have him sit down right next to and hold hands with the woman who's going to do the seance. The lights go off, and when they come back on, she's stabbed to death and dead, and Scotty's holding a knife in her back. So they're real smart. Before the lights went out, she mentioned the names of Kesla, Baratus, Red Jack, and some kind of monstrous, terrible evil. But then, now she's dead. So they all beam on board the Enterprise to continue the investigation, and they have this glorified lie detector there, which they can use to put your hand on. They ask you a question, and it can tell if you're lying through the computer. So finally, they get Scotty up there, and they find he's not lying, that he doesn't remember killing any of these women, but he does remember an evil presence right before he found himself behind Cybo with a knife in her back, the lady. So they're confused by this evil presence thing because he's not lying about it. So Kirk and Spock use the computer to investigate the names that the lady spoke, which was, one of them was Red Jack, which apparently was a nickname for Jack the Ripper. And the other nicknames were all for unsolved strings of murders that happened throughout the last few centuries across planets. So they then make this jump that this must be an ancient incorporeal entity that feeds off of fear. And they narrow it down to the only person it could be is the investigator, Mr. Hengist. Because the knife that was used for the killings was from the planet that Mr. Hengist was from. So when Mr. Hengist realizes they're onto him, he tries to flee, but he's knocked out by Kirk. which sends the incorporeal entity away from him and into the ship's computer, and it takes over the ship and is trying to scare everyone to gain power from their fear. This makes it's perfect sense. So the battle to battle this, Bones gives everyone in the ship a sedative, making them all feel drunky and happy, so they won't be scared, so it can't feed off their fear. And then they give the computer the task of expressing pi to its last decimal point, which eventually causes the computer to shut down and go crazy, And so the entity leaves the computer and enters the Argelian leader guy, who then gets Vulcan nerve pinched. So then it goes back to Mr. Hengist, who they then sedate, and they beam him into space into billions and trillions of different atoms so that he'll take him too long to get back together and he'll eventually die. So yeah, that's the crazy episode of Wolf in the Fold, everyone. So Lou, what'd you think of that episode?
When you were going through that synopsis, I was nodding along, and I don't watch a lot of Star Trek, so I was like, yep, I remember that. And then when you got to the Baratus Kessler Red Jack thing, I was like, oh yeah, that's when the episode got crazy. Like, all of that other stuff was whatever, but that's when it went bonkers.
It went off the deep end.
Was this a particularly bonkers episode of Star Trek?
I mean, on the scale, probably, yeah, on the spectrum. Usually they're a little more science-based and not so more like, is this some kind of spiritual weird entity kind of thing? And seances. That's not a usual thing in this, which is funny because the guy who wrote this episode, I don't recall his name, but he actually wrote this exact same story for an episode of something called Thriller, which was hosted by Boris Karloff, the guy who played Frankenstein in the 70s.
Wow.
Well, he hosted it in the 70s, played Frankenstein back in the 30s, obviously. And so he wrote this whole story about how Jack the Ripper was actually an entity that could live throughout time and was killing women, and they had to stop it somehow. And then they just barely adapted it for Star Trek for this episode. So
they tried a little.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry. I was a little side note there, but yeah, you're right. It's a little on the weird deep end there.
The things I liked about this episode, I like that we got to see a lot of, like, I feel like normally you get to meet like one or two additional characters, but I feel like this is one of the rare times we got to meet like 5 additional named characters. That's just a rare occurrence in general, so that was kind of a nice breakup. It was nice to see a more confined episode, because in reality it was 3 locations?
Yeah, pretty much.
Reasonably. And I like it anytime they just invent magic space technology that never comes up again. And so the psycho tricorder or whatever, like, we're never going to see that again, but I'm sure it'll be useful 1,000 times after this fucking moment.
Of course.
But we'll never see it again.
Probably.
So, I like anytime they make up space magic. Things I didn't like, they were, I don't know, it felt at moments almost flippant about the murders. And I think, Jeremy, you touched a little bit on this, in that, like, oh yeah, they just left her alone in a room with someone they thought murdered a woman a little while ago.
Yeah.
Like, in that regard, the whole thing felt very kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
That being said, Piglet guy, maybe that's the intention. Maybe he wanted everything to feel random and crazy.
I thought he was Pooh, not Piglet.
Oh, that's Piglet.
Oh, okay, yeah. Mr. Hengist, for those.
I'll talk about it.
He plays Piglet in Winnie the Pooh for a long time.
Until like 2009 or something like that, he was Piglet.
Oh, Pooh Bear.
He's that guy in this episode is the voice of Piglet you have in your head.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So Lou, how much Star Trek have you seen before?
Not a whole lot. I kind of watched a lot of Next Generation growing up, and I have seen the movie Generations with Malcolm McDowell, right?
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
Yes,
it's my favorite one.
That's the one I've seen. I like Star Trek. I'm not a huge Star Trek fan, so I've never really gotten like deep into it.
Right.
Well, check out the MuppeTrek podcast, because we're a gateway drug to getting started on original Star Trek.
It's very fun. I was really surprised with. I mean, it's crazy. It was absolutely. It wasn't hard to follow what was going on in the episode, even when it got crazy. Because I was like, oh, I've seen Scooby-Doo.
Right. That's a great comparison to this episode, Scooby-Doo. That's true.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Who's the mass killer?
Oh, it was me, Pooh Bear. Do you have any more factoids, Jarman?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to close out our discussion here. I guess there was obviously some chauvinism. I have to apologize to Lou for that because that's throughout 60s Star Trek, unfortunately. But that's just
there are some episodes where it's worse than others. But we just reviewed an episode where basically the female lead started really, really strong and then fell apart to tears literally 10 minutes in.
It's like you're so close to having a female
and it was
character.
like, oh, come on. You almost wrote a good female character. You were so close.
It's almost this like benevolent sexism where it's like, hey, we're aware that I think they literally say women are more easily and more deeply terrified. Just as a general statement. And they seem to, like, their position seems to be, we're aware of that, and we're not, we don't hold it against them,
Yeah. Oh, poor unfortunate women.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. And the outfits. Anyways, but
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that there was a mystery through it, and that's funny that you said Scooby-Doo because it was very much like a Scooby-Doo mystery. That's very accurate. Just a few factoids. This episode was made around the time that Leonard Nimoy had earned an Emmy nomination for his portrayal of Mr. Spock on the previous season.
Okay.
So William Shatner has admitted that this made him very upset, and because he wasn't getting enough attention. So it led to tensions between the two actors on the episode. When this episode came out, was being filmed. So there's a conscious effort on the part of the writers to sideline Nimoy for this episode and give Shatner more screen time, which is pretty evident because Spock was up on the ship. He wasn't even there for most of the episode. I
could see that.
And the actress who was going to play the belly dancer in the beginning, she recalled in a memoir, they sent me to the makeup department because they wanted to do something extravagant with my look. The first day, they put feathers of different colors all over my face, on my eyelashes, my eyelids, my nose. And then they took me to the director, and he said, no, less. And the makeup people kept trying to match his vision for 4 days with less and less feathers and fewer colors each time. But the director kept saying no. Finally, on the 5th day, she came in with no makeup, and he said, that's it. That's what I want to see, her face. Oh
my gosh.
She did her own belly dance choreography for the scene, but due to censorship concerns, they had to cover her navel with a jeweled flower because remember, navels back then were dirty.
That was a big deal.
Yep. What were you going to say?
So I remember the last time we saw them, the trivia was that they had to sneak the censor out to like a drunken lunch.
Oh, yeah.
While they filmed it.
Yeah. And it worked.
It got aired.
And also, if you watch Next Generation, folks, this episode that Scotty is actually on in Next Generation is called Relics. He actually describes this episode, and he says he was back on Argellis 2. He was in a wee bit of trouble. So he he mentions,
very cool.
Yeah, he calls back to this episode. And actually, there's the courtroom scene, the hearing, that goes on for 15 minutes and 30 seconds is the longest uninterrupted scene in all of the original series. They'd never gone that long in one scene before, which I thought was kind of fascinating. And then I didn't really notice it going on for too long. So that's pretty impressive.
It was very like 12 Angry Men almost.
Yeah. So it worked. So that's it for the trivia. What you got for our Trek Muppet 30 Rock connections this week?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I've got some mix and match, and then I've got a few that are all three. It's very exciting. So Muppets and Trek, Don Knotts was known for his role in the Andy Griffith Show, which shared multiple sets with Star Trek because it filmed on RKO 40, which later became Desilu Studios when Lucille Ball bought it.
That's right.
So they shared a lot of sets. John Fielder, who played Hellskin. What the hell is his name? Helmist? Mr. Helmet.
Oh.
Most widely known for playing Piglet, as we mentioned. Well, Winnie the Pooh is played by notable voice actor Jim Cummings, who provided a voice for the 1997 PC game Star Trek Starfleet Academy.
I don't know how you find this shit.
I know, I tried. And then 30 Rock and Muppets, Tina Fey had a large role in Muppets Most Wanted, playing the head of the Gulag. And in an episode of 30 Rock, My Whole Life is Thunder, when Jack Donaghy's mother dies, Kermit speaks at her funeral.
Oh, I forgot about that.
All right, now I've got two. I've got the good ones down at the bottom. So the actor Malik Pancholi, who played Jack's assistant Jonathan, who was featured singing in this episode,
yes,
was in the pilot episode of Star Trek Discovery, Vulcan Hello.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And the 30 Rock episode Subway Hero featured guest star Tim Conway, who was co-starred with Don Knotts and the Apple Dumpling Gang. Tim Conway also made appearances on season 2 of Sesame Street. So Tim Conway's in all 3.
What a connection.
And my other all 3 is Whoopi Goldberg, who played Guinan on The Next Generation and a few of the movies. She played God in It's a Very Merry Muppet Christmas Movie. And she made multiple appearances on 30 Rock, the most notable of which being that Tracy goes to consult with her when he's trying to EGOT.
Oh, yeah. I remember that episode. That was
she's
good.
got the EGOT. So those are the MuppeTrek 30 Rock connections.
That's wonderful.
That I could find this week.
I've got one.
Ooh.
It's small but Floyd. There's a character named Floyd on 30 Rock. Jason Sudeikis is his character. And
Floyd Pepper.
Floyd Pepper, yeah, he's one of the Electric Mayhem.
Yeah,
very nice.
He's the guy that gives Fozzie his hip sunglasses. Name is Embiid.
You're in the groovy club now. So similarities between these episodes. I got a couple for just the Muppet Star Trek at first, and then I have one that's for all 3.
Yeah, I think I've got one that covers all 3.
So both the Muppets and Star Trek have a chorus girl in them, in quotations, that a man has a strong negative reaction to. So Don Knotts is scared of the chorus girl monster in his dressing room, and the spurned lover to the belly dancer in Star Trek, because he's the guy with the flat nose, you know?
Man, the most broken nose I've ever seen on film.
He had the worst nose.
That guy. That's a good one. Good one. Both feature people passed out. 30 Rock with Don Geiss and Trek with Scotty.
Oh, there you go. All right. I got an alien that is tranquil on the outside, but crazed on the inside, like Jack the Ripper demon that is crazed for fear inside, but the tranquil detective on the outside.
Okay. All right. Louis, you got any?
Oh, man, I played my Floyd one too early. So
your Floyd card.
That's good.
It's okay. We can cover it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So in Star Trek, the crew gets inoculated / drunk. And on 30 Rock, the crew gets drunk.
Oh, that's true. I have all 3 episodes that we watched have someone who is demoted. Jack gets demoted to the 12th floor from being, I think, with the CEO, the president. Scotty gets demoted to a prisoner from his rank of being an officer. And Fozzie gets demoted from the Cool Dude Shades Wearing Club.
He was only there for a little bit of time, too.
He was.
Both 30 Rock and Trek feature a woman in red being flirted with. Liz Lemon in her setup for Floyd.
That was a great scene.
And the belly dancer.
Oh, yeah. All right. I don't have any more. Unless, if you got more.
I've got one that covers all 3.
Nice.
All 3 feature people blaming and turning on each other. The murder suspects, the writers when Liz finds out her sandwich is gone, and Kermit when he thinks he's being blamed for the bad music.
That's true. That is true.
Bam.
What's that noise?
Transporter malfunction. Transporter malfunction.
All right, so this is the part of the show where we transport one character from one episode to another episode and vice versa and all over the place for this one. I don't know how this is going to work.
That's true.
But who wants to go first?
All right. I've got a bunch of stuff. Oh, my God. All right. This week, Muppets to Trek. I've got the puppy going over and replacing one of the dead women because we don't know if it's alive or not.
Oh, my God.
Hi, she's dead, Captain. And then Muppets to 30 Rock. I've got Don Knotts going over and replacing Kenneth because they both have that kind of hayseed, humbunkin' kind of feel.
Louis, you got anything?
He wasn't in this episode of 30 Rock, but I want to see Dr. Leo Spaceman.
Oh, yes.
As Bones on Star Trek.
That's amazing. Oh, my God.
It's the future. Science is whatever we want it to be.
I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer. Actually, I am a bricklayer. I'm not really a doctor.
I'm not a doctor either.
That would be amazing.
I agree. Unfortunately, he's not in this episode, but you're absolutely right. That would be a great switch out. And I think he could easily come over and replace Rolf in Veterinarian's Hospital.
That's true.
with a very slight pivot.
I have a pretty straightforward one, but I think in this episode in particular, Miss Piggy would be a great replacement for Liz Lemon. Just like, really hamming it up, having everyone have to work for her to make her look beautiful before this guy arrives. And I think Miss Piggy would be perfect in that little placement.
You're right. I could see Miss Piggy setting something like this up for Kermit, like a meet cute.
Yeah, and then when Floyd shows up at her apartment and she's not ready, she's in curlers and she gets all pissed off and just hits him in the face.
Crone.
Yeah.
Trek to Muppets. I've got a weary Scotty coming over and replacing the patient in Veterinarian's Hospital.
That works.
And then Henkist coming over and replacing Kenneth, because once again he had a very kind of like Hoboken, Humpkin, backwoods kind of feel to him.
That's true. Lou, you got more?
Let me see. You could do. Oh man, you know what? You could definitely have. This wasn't also very much like of a Jack episode of 30 Rock, but you could definitely have William Shatner play Jack.
Oh my god, I had the same thing. Yes.
Yeah.
I had Captain Kirk replacing Alec Baldwin. I can see him kirking it up in that scene where he's smacking around Rip Torn. He's like, "You've got to wake up. I can't be on the 12th floor." That'd be so great. I could totally see that happening. And then I had Jack McBrayer to go over to replace Mr. Hengist on Star Trek. He'd be like, "I've got to investigate. I can't just let this go." Like that. Just like have him turn into Satan later. He's like, "I'm going to kill you all." So that'd be fun. And Don Knotts is going to replace the belly dancer in the Star Trek episode.
Okay, I'm with you. Go on.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think Alec Baldwin should replace Fozzie with the Shades, being in the Shades Club and everything, and he'd be like so cool he would stay in the Shades Club because he's Alec Baldwin.
That's true.
He's
Alec Baldwin.
And then I want Mr. Hengist to replace Scooter and create a murder mystery on the Muppet Show Theater.
Where Jack the Ripper goes from Muppet to Muppet
and like kills the chickens and like they have to figure out
people. Oh my gosh, I would watch that episode.
And they finally figure out it's Scooter, the least suspected, because he's so sweet and innocent. He's Scooter, but it turns out to be him the whole time.
It was Piglet the whole time. I've 30 Rock to Trek. I've got Jenna coming over and replacing the belly dancer because even though she knows she's going to die, she just wants the attention.
That works.
And 30 Rock to Muppets. I've got Kenneth coming over to host the Monster of the Week bit because I think his kind of wide-eyed innocence would fit in nicely there.
Oh, he would have done it better, I think. Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Jack McBrayer.
Certainly less just obscene mugging to the camera.
Yes.
30 Rock to Star Trek. I think Tracy would be more convincing holding the bloody knife with the murder victim standing right in front of him going, "I have no idea what just happened.
I don't remember, Jackie D."
Yeah, with Scotty, I'm still red as sus, but like if it was Tracy, I would be like, yeah, maybe he is that dumb.
I don't remember. I don't want to do a full impression because I think that's not...
The computer confirmed.
I think it's not appropriate for me to do a full impression in 2021 of Tracy Morgan, but it's so hard not to because his voice is wonderful.
He has an iconic voice.
He does an iconic voice.
Well, before we get into our normal outro, Louis, thank you again for joining us for this special episode of MuppeTrek. Where and how do you want people to find you?
So you can find Robots versus Dinosaurs on pretty much any podcast app, Stitcher, Apple, all of them,
Yeah.
I'm not listing them in any particular order.
Your favorite podcast platforms.
Yeah. And we are on Instagram at RobosVDinos and Twitter at VSRobots. So if you search for Robots versus Dinosaurs on any social media, you probably find me. I do. I make a movie poster with like sort of a face swap for every episode that I do, so it's pretty easy to find it online.
Okay,
very nice.
So yeah, check it out on Robots versus Dinosaurs. If you like robots or dinosaurs or both, you're gonna like this podcast. And if you're listening to us, you will probably like this podcast.
Or if you just like Louis, like just go.
You just like Louis, you're probably gonna like this podcast.
Thanks.
But I guess that brings us to the end of episode 43 of the MuppeTrek podcast.
Join us next time for the Muppet Show with special guest Cloris Leachman.
And original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles.
So, from the lovers, the dreamers, and us.
Live long and prosper, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the MuppeTrek podcast. Be sure to follow us on social media on Facebook and Twitter.
Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform.
This podcast has been brought to you by A Play on Nerds.